Saul was one of the most influential figures in early development of Christianity. His writings and epistles were key when teaching about Jesus in the New Testament. In teaching about Jesus, St. Paul helped to unify the direction of the emerging religion of Christianity. St. Paul emphasized the rule that salvation is based on faith and not religious customs. St. Paul was both Jewish and a Roman citizen. In his early life, he took part of the persecution of Christians. During that time, while he was a Roman, he persecuted Christians and obeyed the Roman governor, and he made sure that they were thrown in jail. However, one day, while he was persecuting Christians, or going to go on the road to do so, he was on a road to Damascus, and he had his conversion there, and Jesus struck him, and God said, "Why are you persecuting my people?" Due to that, he lost his sight, and he was blind for a few days and couldn't see anything. God spoke to him a few days later and asked him if he wanted his sight back, and he said yes, but he said that he had to go and preach his conversion story and the gospel to the world. St. Paul was Jewish, and he was from a devout Jewish family. He grew up in Jerusalem and was brought up by Gamaliel, a leading authority in the Jewish religious establishment. St. Paul was a Pharisee, a group of Jewish people who administered the law. He admitted to participating beyond the measure in the persecution of Christians. This included taking part in the stoning of Stephen, a Christian. One reason St. Paul was so critical of his new section, which followed Jesus Christ, was the fact that he was appalled that Jesus died a criminal death on the cross. After his conversion, St. Paul threw himself straight into mission work. Over the next few years, he traveled to Damascus and later in Jerusalem. He made several special journeys to areas around the Mediterranean basin, where he sought to spread the teachings of Jesus and offer support to the fledgling Christian community which was being persecuted. St. Paul visited many places, such as the island of Cyprus and Pisidia and Laconia, also in Asia Minor. Later, he traveled as far west as Spain. He established churches, and he later made some areas a central place for everyone to go and preach and talk about his missionary activity. Teachings with St. Paul. St. Paul's was instrumental in deciding that former Jewish practices such as circumcision and dietary law were not required by Christians. St. Paul taught that Jesus Christ was a divine being and salvation would be achieved by faith alone. Now, St. Paul, just the whole thing reminds me of a movie that I saw. It's called The Machine Gun Preacher. I saw this about a week ago on Netflix. Just streaming on Netflix, and I saw this. And this just reminds me of him and his whole conversion story and how he turned from being against God and disobeying all of his rules to really just converting and helping people that really needed to hear the word of God and whoever was in need. So, The Machine Gun Preacher, it's about a former biker who was in a biker gang who has just gotten out of prison for assault. He's an avid drug user, and to get money for drugs, and he has killed people. He's admitted to killing people, assaulting people. But his wife who was also part of the biker gang, decides to go to mass, and during that mass, I think it was a Baptist mass, and she was converted completely from this person in a biker gang to who was a follower of Christ. And after a while, he forced his name's Sam Childers to come to church with her, and he did, and he was baptized, and his life was changed forever. During that time, he heard about the civil war in the Sudan and how it was affecting so many children, and how child soldiers were being used, and how big of a mess it was, and all the aid workers that were being killed, and how a group called the LRA was just taking children and killing their families and not really caring about it. So once he saw that, he made it his mission to go build orphanages and to rescue as many children from the LRA and put them in orphanages and care for them and make sure that they had somewhat of a childhood when he was there. He goes over to Sudan multiple times. He establishes a shelter. He's determined to save as many lives as possible. He even leads armed missions into enemy territory to rescue kidnapped children. This just reminds me of St. Paul, because he went from almost persecuting just regular people and killing them just because he was addicted to drugs and to violence and to guns. But after almost, he wasn't exactly struck blind, but he was converted from being just like St. Paul was. He went from one of the worst people in the world, not in the world, but just a bad human being, to affecting so many children's lives, and just to forming a relationship with them. But yeah, this movie just really, when I just thought of St. Paul, I just thought of this movie and how similar these St. Paul is and he is. They're so similar, and he even preaches at his regular church. He also had a church that he built in Sudan to help the children out and to help the people out, and in his hometown in Pennsylvania. And he preaches some of Paul's Gospels, and even talks about the struggles that he went through and relates them to his life, and tells them of how many mistakes he's made, and that he hasn't done much for society other than help these children. But yeah, I think this movie is really, just relates to, I don't know, I saw this the other day on Netflix, just streaming around, decided to watch it, and just reminded me of that. But yeah, that's it.